Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, Merry Christmas, and you guys are getting ready for the new year, so it's the end of 2024, and I figured there'd be no better way than to send it out with a bang with a podcast with our buddy Ian Roussel. I know a lot of you guys watch this stuff on, I think it was one of the Discovery channels was online, maybe it was Mav TV, but it was Full Custom Garage. He did a lot of rad stuff. Always used a lot of Volkswagens in some of his, in a good portion of his builds, and he's just a super creative guy. A lot of VW connection there with Ian. So he's a straight up VW dude to the core. Started out back in the day with the funky bus and a bunch of stuff. So it's a cool podcast. I know you guys are going to get into it. So glad we're able to deliver this to you guys to cap off 2025. To cap off 2024 and prepare for another year of podcasts and some good stuff. And we're getting close to episode 300, man. So I'm looking forward to getting that one out. And I'll also have a Facebook, or actually a YouTube video that I'll post on Facebook as well. That'll be coming out just after the new year, which will be our. So I did a roundtable with myself, Tori Alonso, Bob Daniels from the 80s Custom page, and Russell Ritchie. And what we did is we picked our favorite top 10 magazines covers. We just started this episode with VW Trends, and it's going to be, the parameters are from 1984 to 1989. We pick our top 5 covers, and then we pick our top 5 covers from 1990 to 1995. So that's how we broke it up, and we pick our top 5s. It's interesting to see how many, from guys from all over, East Coast, West Coast, around the world, how we pick our favorite covers, and do they have some overlap. So it'll be a pretty interesting video for you guys to check out. That's going to be coming out just after the first of the year, and that'll be, look on our YouTube page, so make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel so you don't miss that. But it'll be pretty interesting. So if you guys want, I'll leave a link in this description below, and it's 99 West. There's a website that has just about every cover of every magazine that's out, for the most part, automotive there. It's a cool resource to have. There'll be a link in the description of the podcast below to go check it out. And maybe you guys can play along. So you understood the parameters. If not, skip back, listen to the parameters, and pick your top 5, and then see how they compare to our top 5 covers and why we like the covers we like. So I'm excited for that. Also, you guys, if you're ready, which I think you should be, get your rooms booked today for One Crazy Weekend. There'll be a link in the description below taking you to the Showtime page on letstalkdubs.com. So if you want to go to letstalkdubs.com, click Showtime and book your rooms now for 2025 One Crazy Weekend. It's going to be bigger and better. We're moving it to the top of the parking garage because we've outgrown the parking lot. The cool part is upstairs, the top of the parking garage has an unbelievable, pretty much panoramic view of the strip at nighttime. So we'll get some cool shots set up for some cars there. And it's going to be even bigger, even better, and way cooler this year. We're going to be doing, there's a few guys going to be building some 80s builds. And hopefully we get our guy Ian Roussel out there. Also, Kid Dean is going to be coming out to debut mini truck squareback that he's building. So that should be pretty rad. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of, there's some other, Andy Finch is building an 80s car. Russell Ritchie's building an 80s car. Tori Alonso has resurrected an 80s car from the dead. That was a project from Chris Addington that Steve Kinect was working on. So a car unearthed in archaeology of Volkswagens from the Bakersfield days, and that car is in the process of being built, as it's being built by Steve Kinect from Volksworks in Bakersfield, the guy who brought you all the cool cars out of Bakersfield. He's building that with Tori Alonso. I'm excited to see that car come out. There's going to be some cool stuff out there. So Bob Daniels, Russell Ritchie, Andy Finch, Tori Alonso, all those guys are building some 80s cars. And hopefully, I was gonna dig into an 80s car, but I think I'm really gonna push to try to get my split window out this year. So the car's been in the process for a long time. So looking forward to having one of my cars back on the road. So if you guys are interested, I will be posting up on, if you look on the Samba, if any of you guys that listen are interested in buying one of my cars, I have my Mexican Beetle is going to be coming up for sale. I had a friend of mine that expressed some interest. I offered it up to him, and then he's kind of didn't seem so sure. So if any of you guys are interested in the Mexican Bug, go to the Samba, check it out. If not, send me a message at Bill at Let's Talk Dubs. This is a Mexican Beetle with very, very little modifications done to it. It's brand new, 4,500 kilometers on it. I'm just not putting the miles on it, and I'm running out of garage space right now to be able to have it, and I think somebody would love to have this thing. It's really at a reasonable price, comes with the original. It does not have a U.S. title. It has some paperwork with it, but again, that'll be for further discussion. It's definitely a collector's piece, and there's, depending on where you live, it's coming up on 25 years. So in 2028, the car should be able to be easily registered, but it's brand new, 4,500 kilometers on it, hydraulic lifters, fuel injected, a brand new Mexican Beetle. So just some minor little cosmetic things here and there. Other than that, the thing has got 4,500 kilometers on it. It's brand new. So if you're interested in that, shoot me a message at bill@letstalkdubs.com, or bill@letstalkdubs is my email. So make sure you shoot me an email if you have any interest in the Rojo Mexican Beetle. Other than that, we got, want to make sure you guys get your rooms booked. I don't want to hear you guys upset that you didn't make the room cut off. They will no longer sell pre-reserved rooms 1 month out. 1 month out of October 2nd through the 4th for one crazy weekend this year. 1 month out, they will stop. They will close the room block. Right now, we can sell as many rooms as possible. So guys, get on there, book your rooms, reserve your rooms, get them locked in, so that way we can make sure we got room for everybody. Last year we were busting at the seams. This year we've made 4 times the room, because I think there's just that many more people coming. There's a dozen people coming from around the world that are coming to this event. There's going to be, last year we did a vintage BMX show. So if you have a vintage BMX, bring it out to the show. We put them on, we have them secured, put it in a display area where you can show off your vintage BMX bike. That would be really cool. Last year we had about 12 of them on display, and I'm looking to get the BMX display even bigger. If you're into BMX, vintage BMX, and you have interest in possibly organizing, because what I'd love to see for this event is a vintage BMX skateboard and toy and literature show for Volkswagens in one combined banquet room. If I have enough interest and I get some people that want to come out, set up some displays, maybe put some stuff up for sale where it's actually viable to take up a large conference room, I will do that. We can make this a well-rounded 80s type event that's got more 80s culture going into it. So vintage BMX, skateboards, all that stuff. If you're into it and you want to find a place to kick something like this off, let me know, because I'm looking to get this rolling at one crazy weekend where there's also some of that happening here. So for more information, you guys know how to get a hold of me. I appreciate that. If you got friends, people that are connected that do that kind of stuff, I'd love to see a big skateboard, BMX, and toy and literature thing all kind of combined into one, because we've got the space. Why not use it? Also, this year we're going to be doing a poker tournament that's going to be put on by VW Trends, and a bowling tournament put on by Roussel. So don't have our primary sponsor yet, so we'll be getting our primary sponsor figured out here shortly. But when we do, we'll let you guys know. But without any further ado, guys, let's get into it this week. A great podcast with our buddy Ian Roussel from Full Custom Garage. Go give him a follow. Check him out. VW Guy to the Core, building cool hot rod cars, customs, and really stuff with a flavor from the way back. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into it this week. Ian Roussel with Full Custom. Ian on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
today's show, I know a lot of you guys watch a lot of different programs on TV, and we're always looking for that connection with the Volkswagen. On today's podcast, any of you guys that have been out there watching some of the shows that were on cable, there's a Full Custom Garage, and there's a gentleman on the program who's actually is the guy the show's about, which is Ian Roussel, and that's our guest on the podcast today. So, Ian, welcome to the podcast.
Hello all.
So
good to be here.
It's great to have you on. I've been watching a few series of your show, with the world of YouTube. Luckily, you're on YouTube now, and we're going to kind of get into a lot of that. But what I've noticed, there's a lot of, I would probably say, if I had to guess, 30% of your builds could possibly be VW based.
Yeah, it's a habit. I can't quit.
And I'm assuming you have a VW story about your first VW.
Oh, definitely. Everybody does. That was one of the things I learned once I started getting into the Volkswagen habit.
So what's your VW story, and how did you get into Volkswagens?
My grandma, she had one. I've told this story a lot of times, so trying to make this interview unique. But yeah, my grandma had a Bug. My dad said, hey, if you want to get a car, take grandma's old VW and fix it, and you could drive at 16. So started the craft at 14 years old.
Oh, nice. And so from there, a lot of us guys in the VW hobby, we become these, amateur mechanics because the Volkswagen was kind of the platform that gave us the ability to work on it out of mandate, or, just get stuck doing, not getting a good deal. My mom, my parents were Greek, right? So we had the Greek mechanic that I had to go to, which was Stavros. And every time I took the Bug there, it was $250. And when you're making $6 an hour, like I had to figure stuff out, So do you think working on Volkswagens was one of the ways that you really helped build your confidence as like working on mechanical things and stuff like that?
Oh, 1,000,000%. I mean, where I grew up in New York, you consider like the hot rod culture, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, guys in Southern California grew up with the American car, right? 32 Ford. In New York, the VW was just a throwaway item. So I got the How to Fix Your VW Idiot Manual, that one. Everybody knows it. Oh, yeah. And I took it out of my 72 Super Beetle at 15 years old and figured it out.
Yeah. And now with Volkswagens and starting to work on them on yourself, you kind of, you've gone through this evolution that every, I think, car guy wants to do, right? They want to I'm going to work on cars, and boy, I'm going to get a little TV show and do some stuff. And there's a long road to that point. How did you start getting into, like, once you just work on your own stuff, how did you evolve into working on other people's cars, or just getting crazy with your own custom stuff? Or what was your first kind of forward momentum into doing this thing for yourself?
Well, when I started working on that VW at 14 years old, it was just a natural progression. I talked my friends into getting Volkswagens because they were free. We had this magazine called A Penny Saver, and people were giving away cars. So I was like, no, we can fix these things up. And it was kind of like that. It just evolved. I got a decent job in construction right out of high school, and I didn't want to do it. I wanted to move to California, be with all the guys in the magazines, and build custom cars. And
what year do you move out to California?
97.
I mean, that's a pretty big step to come all the way from the East Coast out to California. What was that whole thing like?
Leap of faith. I like jumping off cliffs, so I did. I left. And people at home were like, yeah, he'll be back. Everybody takes a little vacation to the West Coast. I was like, no, I got bigger plans.
And what was the first impression when you got to the West Coast? I mean, you come out as like when you're back east, what level of car guy are you? I mean, are you fully committed to the hobby, and you're the Ian Roussel, the guy that everybody in New York knows about that does cars, and then you're like, dude, I'm going to California. It's where all the car builders are. Is that where you're at?
Well, a little bit. So I was part of a club called the CVA, the Connecticut Volkswagen Association. It's kind of a long-standing East Coast thing. So I went to a couple meets with that, and I had this VW bus. I could send you pictures of it. You may have seen that. It's a shorty. I shortened it, mini wheelbase, so where you take out the side doors, and then I chopped the top and turned it into a single cab with an extension. Super, super radical thing for the time.
Right.
So took that to the car show, and people were just like floored.
Really?
And I knew I was onto something.
And so what ends up happening with that? Like your first Volkswagen, what year was that one?
The first one was a 72 Super Beetle. Just a dog. I did not like that car at all. Totally rotten. You know, the typical shimmy shake front end, the whole deal. Auto stick. Just a nothing car.
And so what's your first cool Volkswagen that you picked up?
In high school, I got a 67 Beetle, and that was it. It was on. Because I had lowered the Super Beetle with the struts. I tried some things, and it didn't add up. So I got a 67 rust bucket, and then it was on. Lowered it, put the rims on, cowl look, shaved the side trim, that whole thing.
Now, is there any particular, like when you're a young kid, because I, you know, for some reason I've found it interesting to try to encapsulate this moment. What was a moment for you? Like, what do you have a memory of, like the first thing you saw in your neighborhood, or some dude where you saw some guy in this car and you're like, bro, that dude is cool, and I'm gonna be him one day.
Exactly. So there was two dudes. Again, this is New York, Westchester County, not super upstate, but our house, we kind of lived at a corner where you could see a lot of traffic. So this one guy pulls up in a VW trike to the stop sign and wheelie. He pops a wheelie right out of the stop sign. I'm like, what was that? And then another dude, you know, again, I'm 13, 14 years old, and I see a narrow eye Baja kid, yellow, bright screaming yellow with the stinger. I'm like, what is that? And then some dude about a mile away had an oval window, put on a IRS chassis, just a nice car. And he introduced me to Hot VW's magazine. I was just knocked out.
Nice. No, that's, you know, I've always, you know, for me, we were a kid. There's a guy around the corner, and he had like a jacked up 57 Chevy that I'd probably think is like kind of dorky today, but I saw that and I was like, man, those are real, like a Hot Wheels. One day I'm having a cool car like that. You know what I mean? Like I just had this whole vision in my head, like, and then from that point forward, it's funny because I talk with a bunch of buddies of mine, and I think like we're still chasing that cool dude that was at that intersection, because one day we're going to be him. And if we can be that to some other kid, that's like the best thing ever. Right.
I agree. I'm going to try to switch up the light a little bit here.
Yeah.
Because we talked about the sun moving in the home.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah, no worries.
it's just a little bit shadowy. Whoa, trying this. But yes, exactly what you're saying. The cool guy in the neighborhood when you're a kid. It's like, I want to be just like him.
Now you move out to California in 1997. What's your first impression of California when you get there? Was it what you thought it was going to be? Was it totally different? Was your onboarding kind of rough? Like how's that whole transition, especially from being back east, right? Everybody notices your accent in 3 seconds, right? So they're like, oh, where are you from?
Well, a lot of the fellows that I met when I moved to pretty close to LA. It was Glendale, California.
Mm-hmm.
I rented a shop. I met a guy at the DMV with that VW bus that I mentioned. I chopped and shortened. So I show up with New York plates, you know, total metal flake, weirdo paint job. And this guy's like, you're somebody. I'm like, not yet, but I want to be. So they rented me space at their shop. And then they were from the Silver Lake area. And I just got to meet a lot of like really, you know, Southern California generational kind of cats. And it was pretty easy. It was remarkable. Like it was almost destined.
So you didn't really there wasn't this big culture shock where you came in and you thought like, man, these guys are not what I thought it was, you know, like a totally different kind of, like you went into it. And then probably where you're getting into over there in the Glendale area, are you into, cause your style leans real heavy, traditional hot rod. And when we say traditional hot rod, we're talking anything goes hot rod, not hot rod where it's like within these parameters, which I want to get into a little bit, because there's a lot of these, everyone's got their definitions, right? But you know, I love your build style because it's uniquely you, and it changes with every platform, you know? Yeah,
that was the thing. It was not I was not a dedicated hot rodder. I met a fella. I built my first hot rod in one of my, I think it was a second or third shop in the LA area. And he said, yeah, once you grow up, you start to get into the American cars, the flathead V8s.
Right.
But I just with the VWs. So yeah, that did learn me a lot of things, but the Ed Roth influence was there from the start. I saw the toys, the cartoons, the models, the whole thing.
Now, did you ever meet any of your idols per se? Like, who's the first guy you meet when you come out to the West Coast?
So there's a fella named Moldy Marvin. Some folks may know him, but he had the Rat Fink party in the Burbank area.
Okay.
So I happened to land this shop about a mile or two up the street, and I'm like, Rat Fink party, Ed Roth, what the heck? I got to go see this guy. And we just became friends. So I met Ed Roth through him, and he had a couple car shows there. Yeah.
And so you meet Ed Roth. What year is this?
Probably 98. Right. Like, it was crazy. When I moved to LA, it was just like bang, 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 one after the other, all these incidents.
So you meet him. What's your first impression? They always say don't meet your heroes, right? like what's your impression when you meet him? And is he?
So I was, not to talk over you, but I was nobody. Like, I was actually too shy to go up to see him. My ex-girlfriend was like, you got to get a T-shirt. So I walk up, and I get a signed T-shirt. That was it.
And then do you ever get a chance? You get a chance to meet him again and kind of connect with him another time?
No, he passed. I just knew him through this fella, Moldy Marvin and Ken Micciarone, and that was kind of it. Yeah, no real connection. Just he was kind of the guy. But since then, yeah, I've met Gene Winfield shortly after that, and then Darryl Starbird, Bill Hines. Actually, I went to Gene Berg's shop in about 1995, the first time I drove across the country, and I met his sons, and they took me around the warehouse.
Yeah. It's always a trip to go out. I mean, one of my claims to fame that a lot of guys that listen to my podcast, because I'm the host, it's the same stories, right? It's like you listen to your dad. My claim to fame was at the Pomona Swap Meet, which is going on today. I actually sold Gene Berg a set of DCNFs. So that was kind of my big deal. He was there with his fisherman hat and his pants pulled up to the middle of his belly. And I was like, dude, I just sold some carburetors at Gene Berg. Like, it was a big deal for me.
The only VW engine I ever built from scratch was through him. Like, I read, he had his Bible, right? He had his whole set of things you had to read. And it's funny because I did it. It was 1679. They did their, compression and all the things with low compression with the dual carbs. And I was in New York at the time. And the UPS driver was like, why didn't you just go to California and buy your car instead of having me bringing it here in pieces? But I drove that car through Vegas, all around the country. And I went to Gene Berg's shop. I was like, hey, look, here's your engine.
Which car? Is this the bus you're talking about?
No, this was a 72. It was another Super Beetle, but it was a convertible. I had put I actually crashed that car. So I put a torsion beam, dropped, and then I put this Gene Berg engine in it. I have pictures of that also. That was around 1993, I guess.
And so, I mean, a lot of what you do is Volkswagen based, but I like how you do a lot of different stuff with a lot of stuff, especially on the show, on the past couple episodes of Full Custom Me, and then I've watched a bunch of your YouTube stuff that you've recently done. What's the first car that got you any recognition on the West Coast?
It was that Shorty bus, because when I moved here, I took, so if you saw the video, you have the flying dune buggy, it has a couple other things involved with that make it sort of unique. But my ex-girlfriend and I created this awesome dune buggy that was way sculptural. So I brought the Shorty VW bus and my Super Beetle conversion convertible car. So when I brought the bus to Bob's Big Boy in Burbank, people were just like, wow, that thing's a freak show.
And who do you start hanging out with? I mean, do you start seeing some of these, because there's like a whole Burbank choppers and guys like that whole scene over there. But those are kind of the Brim Krill, the cuff pants crew. You know what I mean? Like that's their scene. You know what I mean?
Sure, no, they were all out there. The traditional hot rodders, definitely, and that's why I got attention. And it's not like people flocked to me. It's not that they liked me, but I met a couple cool like sculptural artists that were super into cars also. And they're like, "You're the guy." And I started working for them. I had my own shop, but that's what paid the bills. I was building these wacky cars, and then welding gates, welding lawn furniture, doing whatever it took.
And so that's kind of that's maybe a gateway to realize like, hey, I can generate a decent revenue for myself doing something I really like and getting kind of funky with it and making it up as I go. And because it's art, right? Like I'm not fenced within these parameters that we talked about earlier. So when you come out with the bus, there's an evolution that takes place where you're just working with these art guys. And how does the TV show come about? Because you're on TV before the reality, or before Full Custom Garage, you were on TV before that once or twice, were you?
Well, yeah. And again, it's a story that I'm covering again, but I applied to be a contestant on Monster Garage. Like that was the game changer, that TV show. So yeah, I got to be on Monster House first and then Monster Garage as a contestant, and we won.
Yeah. I was on a reality TV show. My brother and I were on a TV show called Bull Run back in 2008 with my VW bus. We drove it on that. It was on Speed TV. You may have been one of the 3 people that watched it.
No, I remember Bull Run thing, right?
Yeah, Bill Goldberg was the host, and so I'm a little bit used to the TV thing where they go, "Do it again." That was really cool. Do it again, and I'm like, that's
yeah. Just once more for safety, then we'll get it this time. That's a take. Yeah.
Right. So
everything.
You're on Monster Garage and then Monster House. And then how does that evolve into you? So you kind of get on a short list of a couple producers or something. They're like, "Hey, we'll reach out to Ian, for this or that."
Right. That was the case. All of a sudden people were popping off. Like, we got an idea, we got a project. And then a cameraman on one of the TV shows comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, like I got this guy who wants to make a DVD about hot rods." And I'm like, "Well, I don't really build hot rods. I could build a cool Volkswagen." He's like, No, it's got a hot rod. He wants to do like a traditional hot rod thing. I'm like, "Well, I think I could do that." I had a shop. I knew a couple people, and yeah, that's how it started. The fella that said, once you get serious about building cars, you're going to build a hot rod. So I was in league with him at the time, and I was like, this guy wants to make a DVD, bring me the parts. He was interviewed in that DVD as well, Scott Devereaux. So yeah, and that's who made the hot thing happen.
And so is Scott the one that made the hot rod comment when you're going to build real cars?
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. And that's where it all came.
And now as you're starting to build, some of these other cars, I mean, I think one of the things with the VW platform, it's like you can do the creativeness and the drivetrain is much less work and engineering and dealing with that. And you can focus more on the visual impact of it.
Yeah, I always loved too. There was this subculture, whether it's the hippies or the deadheads or whatever, but there was this subculture of mutant Volkswagens, and I got stuck on it.
There's Randy Carlson used to do at the VW Classic. He would do a freak show section in the middle, and it would be all these weird VWs that are just some concoction of some guy in his backyard, which it's always been pretty cool. And what's funny is the game from the standpoint of, collectability, things like that, everybody's collections are changing and everyone's on the search for like the most rare thing, the split, and the split becomes attainable. And then you get the Hebmuller. Then after the Hebmuller, you go into that, like, even in myself, one of my things is I picked up a Carmen Ghia TC out of Brazil, and it kind of looks like a Ford Maverick and a 911 had a baby. Right. So it's kind of weird looking, but that's the whole vibe of the scene. And in any scene, it gets like, okay, that becomes blasé. How can we do something? How can we find something more rare, more unique? But in your circumstance, the cool thing is you're able to find anything, start with a vision, get the basic geometry down of like, where are you going to sit? How are you going to steer? Let's build whatever.
Exactly. I was fascinated with the kit cars because there was so many platforms, from the buggies to, yes, every bolt-on thing conceivable, and that's what got me hooked. You did see that with the American cars with the V8 in the front. I mean, there were, but nothing like the VW world.
No, and by no means are we anti anything else in this podcast, because I love. I mean, I've had Steve Strope with Pure Vision Design. I don't know if you know who Steve Strope is, but
I'm not sure.
he builds like wild SEMA cars, and he is. I snuck him on the podcast because I appreciate all cars. I snuck him on the podcast through his story of driving a Carmen Ghia around a shopping mall in New York in the wintertime, or in PA, and he moves out West Coast. But there's a lot of I mean, I love all cars, and it's kind of like the funkier the better. Like, I watched the episode where you had the Corvair. I got a couple Corvairs. Like, the Corvair is like the car hated by all the Camaro and all the GM guys, you know.
Sure.
But it's really a really cool platform to do something kind of cool with. You know what I mean? Even I like them even like just the SS model, which is like the no one loved this SS model, you know, the 180 turbo and stuff like that. But besides some of the Volkswagen stuff, what is some of the other cars that you've built that you really connect with, or you really love, or like, I've always wanted one of X?
Well, I didn't know anything about American cars, like, at all. Another ex-girlfriend's dad gave me like a 77 Cutlass, like, really nice car. The head gaskets were bad, and I could have cared less about that car. Like, I did. I passed on it, continued to work on my VW, but I had no experience with American cars till I moved to California. And this fella who was in the DVD, Scott, I traded him some work. He gave me a 57 Plymouth Belvedere.
Yeah.
And just a rat with a 318 poly engine, whatever it was. And I couldn't believe how raw it was and how much power. Because, you know, there's no headliner, no carpets, just the seat in this freaking metal shape. And I was knocked out. I was like, this feels like a bug, but like, there's something way, way, way more energy in this. And that's when I got started. And I had a shoebox Ford after that, a couple Chevys, like 54, and then some pickup trucks. And yeah, I just got turned on in that way.
Yeah. I mean, in my collection, I've got a 65 Riviera, and, you know,
I want a boat test someday.
Yeah. My mom had one when we were a kid, and it was, I remember sitting in the rear back window with a pencil, pushing in the little grills in the speaker hole and ruining the back deck, thinking it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It made this cool crunchy noise when you just broke the the rear deck. But, you know, I've been a fan myself of Buicks personally, because Buicks, as far as the GM lineup, it was always kind of the gentleman's hot rod, like the factory built customs. You look at like the Invicta and some cars like that. I mean, there's a lot of creativity on the Buick side of the General Motors platform.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that, but a friend said, "Oh, you got to put the Buick Invicta steering wheel on one of your projects." I was like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, look at the deep draw. Look how far in the center is." I was like, "Amazing."
Yeah, and I kind of think, you know, one of the things I'm a big fan of cars of the '60s more than the '50s, because I think the '60s was like the whole space race vibe, and everything had to look like rockets and jets. I mean, even on my Riviera, the slides on the dash look like airplanes, like that you slide forward for the power antenna and the cruise control and all that stuff.
Yeah, the Thunderbirds got pretty radical too. The interiors on those, the dashboards were pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, and the tilt-away steering wheel, like a lot of the stuff that they had on there was just really wild stuff. So
that puts the car in reverse every time you get out of it. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I've had a few of those cars, and every time you swing the steering wheel, it goes into reverse as you're getting out of the car. It's
really
amazing.
That's
yeah. The glitch.
So now you started the TV show. How does Full Custom Garage come about when you kind of get that whole thing put together?
That was directly from the same fella that I did the DVD with. He used that DVD as kind of a business card. It may still be around, a network called Mav TV. It was opened by Lucas Oil. So he used that as a business card. He said, "Hey, this is what we do. We make TV shows about custom cars," and they bit.
Now,
That's how it happened.
and then, so the reality of the process of doing that and filming that experience, because obviously everybody only sees what's filmed and put into the 48 minutes or whatever is going on there. Peeling back the curtain a little bit, what's the timeline on building some of those? Because we know that there's a lot of. I mean, I've done a bunch of the kitchen crasher stuff with my regular business and stuff like that, where it's like they pretend the homeowner's laying some tile, then my crews come in, and a job that should take 4 hours takes 14 because it takes them 900 hours to film 5 minutes of stuff. So.
Oh yeah, you're telling the story. You're preaching to the choir. Yes, constantly behind schedule, last minute wrap ups. Yeah, just endless. And we did that for 9 seasons, back to back to back, always overtime, never finished on time. Cars half working just to get the shot.
Right. And so did that kind of bum you out to some extent, to where it's like you felt like instead of like them filming you being creative, it was like, okay, yeah, we got it. You're creative. Let's just get to let's get the creation over. Like, I mean, did it start affecting your drive a little bit, or were you just like, you know what, it could be worse?
Yeah, well, it didn't affect my drive per se, but after 9 years of that, yeah, you start to know how things are going to work out. And they made that statement. We always have your best interest, in our game plan. So I felt that security. But again, I wasn't trying to be either like a one-trick pony where I just step in, do a couple things, and then step out and it's finished. I wanted to keep it spicy, lively, creative, and yeah, I mean, to answer your question, it was the typical TV scenario, but I didn't get burnt on that per se. I always understood we're making a TV show.
Well, yeah, that's what people would say, and it's pretty funny because we did that series on Bull Run, and people would study the clip for the next episode. And then there was a forum boards at the time on Speech, and they're like, I know who goes home next. It's going to be this guy because I saw this and that and this. And I'm just thinking like, man, these guys are into it. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of get surprised at how much stock people put into stuff they see on TV, and they don't look at it and go, it's a TV show. I mean, come on. When's the first time during that experience, how soon into filming it do you get to where you have an experience, run into someone, or internet comments or something where it just kind of gives you the reality of like, oh wow, I'm kind of under a microscope?
Yeah, it's mostly online that's happened. I built a Zephyr with my friend Victor, and you know the ham, right?
Yeah.
So they just tore apart the ham back in the day. This is years and years ago, but the thread's still there. But that was the first time where, like, I've always been an artist at heart. I've always had like criticism of me in general and then my work. But poor Victor, like, he was all tore up. It was pages and pages of just criticism, and I mean nasty stuff. So, yeah, that was a big tell on what we're up to. And that's the thing. Like, if people are really talking about it, it's a success, right?
Well, I remember one of the producers said on Bull Run, I was talking to the producer, and they said, well, you'd be surprised. A lot of people watch more because they don't like the person than they like, whether they like or hate the person, both fuel people to view it. You know what I mean? Because they'll just sit and it's like a hate watch for people or whatever. But I've always found that, interesting that in around, the 2000s when forum boards get big and all that, it really has a circumstance to affect people, because people hide behind the computer screen, and then all of a sudden it's like when the little old lady gets behind the wheel of her car and all of a sudden she turns into Mario Andretti and she's just cutting people off and yelling at people in traffic. Meanwhile, outside the car, she would never do that. But the internet's done that. And I think it kind of got to its peak around 2010. That's the last time I was on. I used to be on the Samba a ton and stuff. And I would, because of my love for the hobby and trying to inspire people, I'd be like, hey, here's what I'm working on, check it out, and hope to, share what I'm doing. Inspire. Some guy gets on there and just starts saying some cross stuff about my car.
Yeah.
And
oh, we're on the internet big time, like 100%. And let me tell you, the criticism and the hate on the internet has not yet peaked. It's still growing. That tide is still coming in.
Well, and I think for me, it was like because you would think you're in a hot rod forum, let's say at the Ham, right? YouTube's a whole different ballgame. I posted a video yesterday. One of my friends wanted to do a little interview with me. Meanwhile, I've got 300 podcast interviews out. And the guy says, "Oh, that's really nice. Make a video about yourself. How about talking about other people?" And I'm like, "Oh, there's 300 episodes." But just like, but I find it interesting you have to get to a point where you just gotta accept, like, you know what, man, there's going to be haters. And like you said, when there's haters out there, you're doing something right. You know what I mean? Because they're talking, And that's what P.T. Barnum said, that Barnum and Bailey Circus, just spell my name right. My mom told me that. Well, so with build on this, so you do the show for 9 seasons. What becomes the culmination? Well, before we get into that, what are your favorite builds from the show? And are there any builds that you're able to keep or that you would like to find, or anything that stands out like that to you from the show?
Yeah, well, firstly, to discuss favorites, the Johnny 5, the collaboration with Johnny Jalopy, #1, Mutant Volkswagen, right? It's a story that pretty much describes my career. So V8 in the front, radically chopped bust in the back. Yeah, just a.
I love that one. That one is rad.
So, I didn't ruin a split window bus. It was just an ugly, weird, about a 73-ish, I guess, bay window. Nothing special. Pretty rusty. So next in line would be, of course, the bubble top with Victor, the T-Bird, because that was just such an adventure to learn how to form the acrylic like that.
What's interesting when you look at those cars that were built back in the 60s, like the Barris and the Ratfink cars and stuff like that, what's interesting is these guys would build these cars where like they're super rad looking, but it could have been a death trap to drive, like sitting there in the Lexan and like cruising through the Mojave on slow roast.
Oh, if you've ever driven in a bubble top, you'll know most of the people will drive them around with the lids, kind of kicked open in the front, because it's a magnifying glass in there.
So that one was it was a Thunderbird. What year?
62 T-Bird. Yeah.
And then anything that happened throughout the season that for you is super memorable, a do or a don't, or anything that was like a real situation that could have gone way sideways during all the fabrication. I mean, it looks like a lot of stuff could go pretty sideways, but I mean, is there anything that really just, that you remember that was, it could have been real bad in the fabrication?
Well, yes, and this is completely aside from the Volkswagen conversation, but my friend Kai, we did a couple episodes with him, but when we caught his Harley on fire, that was like real. It was like really alarming. I mean, I'm there on film with my shirt off, butt crack showing, swatting this Harley, trying to put the thing out. And that was probably, a noteworthy event to keep fire extinguishers closer.
Yeah, there's always the risk when you're doing those types of things. Now, you do the show for 9 seasons. Are you getting direct feedback with respect to ratings, what worked, what didn't work, what direction they want to go?
No, it's a very loose arrangement. And I was listening to some of the other shows that have transferred from Motor Trend to YouTube. A couple of the fellows were saying, like, it was just like a brainchild. It was a passion project that just kind of got away from us. All of a sudden it's a big deal. People are watching, and we didn't really think so much about all those logistics, just about, the next project. And that was the same case with me too. YouTube is a magic platform simply because there is the direct interaction with the viewers. I mean, it's super, super interesting.
Yeah. And they come to a point where how do you find out, or how does it, like, is it writing on the wall at the beginning of the end of the last season? You're like, well, it's the last season, time to get buck nasty and do something crazy in this season, or is it like you film an episode, we're going to start next March, and hey, by the way, we're not going to renew, or how does that information all come together at you?
Well, it's just like the aging process. I was getting increasingly worn out. If you see the first couple seasons, I was going off. I was building these things like by myself, a couple little, infusions of labor during that. But again, 9 years later, I'm 54 this month. So you start to time out on all that energy.
Well, and everybody thinks just because you're on a cable TV show, like, oh, well, you're getting rich, man. You're loaded. You're making all kinds of money on this thing, and it's like the reality is, I did probably 10 or 12 episodes of Pawn Stars as like the car expert. They're local here. I'd go down there, and I would do it because I thought it was fun to do the history of the car and stuff like that. For me, that was the fun part of it. And then I got to just doing these cheesy cars, and I was like, they were like, what about a 07 Acura? I'm like, nope, I'm out later. Like, yeah, there's a million cool cars. If you want to do cool cars, I'll get a list of them. But
right.
It gets to a point where there's this perception that, oh man, you're on TV, you're loaded, you must be getting paid the big bucks to do that. And meanwhile, you're literally, if you calculate your hours and whatever you're getting paid, it's, we don't want to do that math, because it's like, it's like a minimum wage job. Any money you'll really earn is like, you're like a band, right? The band makes no money making the record. They make all their money touring.
Yeah. You pretty much hit the nail on the head with that. So it's up to the talent to figure out how they're going to retire. You got to make some changes in your lifestyle.
Well, and with that, we've seen recently, right, a lot of these guys from YouTube or from Motor Trend TV and all that stuff, they're kind of they're getting where they're pulling the plug on the thing, and just they're filming their last seasons, and a lot of the creators are going direct, like you did with your YouTube channel. Now your new YouTube channel, well, it's not. How long did you start the new YouTube or the YouTube channel?
It's coming on 2 years, I guess. It's hard to say because I don't really follow it that much. Jamie is the powerhouse behind the whole thing. And we do work together. I know a lot, being in TV for this long. I know a lot about how to make little segments, etc. But she films it with an iPhone. She edits it on iMovie. It's super simple. I mean, it's time consuming, but that's how we're rolling, and it's working out really good.
And how much time goes from the time you film the last episode until you start the YouTube channel? Did you have a little bit of burnout? You kind of had to take some time off, or what's?
Well, no, we had some foresight, and we started the YouTube channel prior to ending Full Custom Garage. Yeah, so that's how that happened. We kind of overlapped, and again, we weren't canned by the network. We decided we were going to move into YouTube. I mean, I actually decided I'm just going to start building cars for clients. And Jamie was like, well, let's try this.
Now, when you do the transition to YouTube, so you're obviously, with you being the talent, they're like, well, we'll just have you, you have no contract. It's like a show to show type thing. They're keeping it loose on your end, better for them type thing. And you could just walk away when you want.
Yeah, basically.
So that's the one time it works out good for the talent, right?
In this case, yeah.
And what has been the biggest learning curve with respect to, like, you're directly in charge of your own destiny at this point, and it's like the creating process, as much as it's kind of easy, right? You're like, it's still work just to make that. To create an episode takes quite a bit of time with editing and all that type of stuff, and the work that goes in it. So shout out to, your girl who's helping you and all that, and making sure that you guys are able to produce something cool. How quickly did your followers ramp up from that? I mean, obviously huge help because you've already got a platform on TV.
Yeah. That was the huge assistance in that regard. You could Google my name and that comes up, all the seasons of that show. So there's a lot to YouTube that we're learning and how to optimize your channel. So, I mean, it was a shoe in with all the people that I was always working on Instagram and Facebook, being very, communicative with people that were interested in what I was doing. So we did have that base, but it took us just a little over a year to get the play button to get 100,000 subscribers. And it's at about like 150 plus right now. So it's pretty cool. Like it's working, and the big challenge for me is to keep it interesting and not get people bored because building cars takes so long. We're starting to get a reputation for not finishing. I haven't finished anything yet except a snowplow installation on my ATV. But that's that. Keep it interesting. We're working on that.
And now in your shop, have you gotten to the point where do you have help with you at the shop to get things done, or are you still trying to one man it?
I really just I like working alone. I love ideally to just outsource certain tasks, especially paint and body, upholstery, that type of thing. I'm a metal fabricator. That's it. I got an idea for design. I can make it happen mechanically and fabrication wise. But right now, I just had some friends come over from Missouri to help me with this Zephyr project. He brought a nice Ford engine and we installed it and got it fired up. So again, as I mentioned, like subcontractors, it was a horse trade deal, just friends helping out, but that type of arrangement. I don't want to have a shop where I manage all the departments of building, custom cars.
Yeah, it's tough. My brother's got a restoration shop and he works kind of solo, and it's tough to find. Now you get an employee, you got the pressure of paying that guy. So now you got to work on a schedule. And I think you lean a little more to the artistic side than the rigid, the grinder that's like meticulously following everything down to the letter, getting broken down on a list. What kind of projects are you working on right now? And, how close are you to debuting some of these? And do you plan to take these particular projects you're going to finish to any specific shows? Are you shooting for anything in particular?
We're not really deadline oriented. I think that was one of the draws to the show. We got to get this finished in time or we're going to lose the shop type of scenario.
Right. Right.
My client, Victor, he's long-term friend. I mean, to call him a client doesn't even support our relationship. He's just a cool cat. So he bought a 38 Cadillac from me. That's currently one of our YouTube projects. I'm trying to nail my part of it by the end of the year. And then he'll do the paint, body finish, and sometime maybe the Santa Maria Cruising Nationals in May. I don't know. He's a goal-oriented dude, so that would be the first one coming out of the shop, the new shop, in 2025.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I actually saw that. You went to that show, I think, on the show. You went to that car show on the show one time before, right?
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I was like, oh, I should go check that show out and just go see what's going on at that show, because it looked like a pretty cool traditional kind of hot rod show, and it's up up a little north.
It was the Paso show, and they moved to Santa Maria to the fairgrounds. It's just a bigger venue, and I mean, if you're in the VWs, it might not really tickle you, but we're talking about lowriders, the bombs, the full-blown customs, it's the West Coast Customs Cruising Nationals. Yeah, it's heavy duty. To see these cars rolling on the street, that's the main event.
Yeah, well, and the custom car scene has changed quite a bit over the past few decades with respect to custom. Used to mean anything goes, and that went from a group that was 90% of the custom car guys to 10% now, and now
I feel a lot more conservative. Yeah, I agree.
Well, and I think what's happened, even in the VW scene, we build now tribute cars to previous styles that have been out before, to where in the 80s, you'd build a car that was a personal expression of what you're into, whatever it was. And nobody was like, no, that's lame, bro. They were like, wow, never thought of that. Mazda Miata door handles on your Bug or whatever. You know what I mean? there's been a change of that. Recently, I had a friend of mine do a car for me in the UK that debuted here. Zorba the Ghia. I'll send you some pictures of Zorba. But
Let's see.
it's a Type 34 Ghia, and we did kind of a lowrider style roof, some custom one-off wheels, and it looks. Some people think it's a candy paint on it, but it's like a metallic sea blue, and it's Greek themed because of my heritage and being Greek. So there's a Greek key in the upholstery that I was fighting with my buddy who's the builder, and it's like, and the car got done, and everybody loves it, and they're like, "This is so cool because it's different, but it's not like." I'm going to be different, put speed holes in everything. And then you see some guy with a drill press just go bananas on a car and you're like, yep, you did it. You drilled the whole car. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, congratulations.
Yeah. That we've seen that fade from the custom car culture to where now everything is custom within this certain parameter. This is your pro street, your pro touring, your hot rod, your traditional, your this. And now we've got all these sub segments of custom. And I think a lot of the wild custom stuff that people are finding in garages and things like that, there's a certain group of people that I think that like the true custom car guys just love those things because it's like, like, oh, where do you get those dash knobs? Oh, those are toilet handles off of a Kohler or whatever. You know what I mean? And that's truly the custom, the custom mentality, where do you think that's appreciated the most in the hobby right now? Is it at that West Coast custom show?
I'm really not sure. I was just while you're talking, I was thinking really about the VW scene and how all of a sudden bugs, and forget about the Type 2s, they got really valuable.
Yes.
And then you can make 100 horsepower car with just money. It's like everything from the narrowed beams. Now the air ride, I mean, everything is accessible as long as you got, as long as you can pay for it. You can have the most radical, high performance, recliner Panzer's approved vehicle, as long as you got a checkbook.
Yeah. Well, there's always the built versus bought type thing. And I think, there's an area for both because, I think, without the guys that have the checkbook that allow the builder to go full tilt on something, you wouldn't see the cars that are as clean as they are today. Like the mega detailed cars where every nut bolt's polished and plated. And I had one of those.
Repeatedly. Yeah. It's just the game is so far, like the bar is raised so high with just a level of detail and perfection. It's unreal.
But I still think, like, I hate to use my car example because the one guy on the internet's going to tell me I just keep talking about my stuff, but I don't care. It's my podcast. But with the car that we just built, it's built where it looks like a show car, but the reality is the bottom side of the car is not polished, plated. It's built to be driven. Mm-hmm. And I think we've reached a point where cars are so mega, but it's like, why have a car that you're not going to drive? Because then it takes all the fun out of it. You know what I mean? The whole purpose is to cruise by that plate glass window, look in the mirrors you're rolling and be like, there I am.
Yeah, I agree with you there. My critics, and I've kind of copped to it too, I've built some trailer queens that would overheat if you drove them on the road, but still, it's not perfect. It's meant to be driven. Okay, it only drives for 8 minutes, but it's going to be a heck of a ride.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And when you're doing the full custom stuff, sometimes stuff is, when we say trailer queen, it's maybe built first for show and second we'll figure out how to drive it.
Yeah. One thing too, I can bring up VW powered is Ed Roth. It's a little bit of an obscure car, but it's the Wishbone with the VW engine in the rear and the narrowed axles. It's kind of like a speedboat almost. And that was in an issue. I don't know what magazine it was, and they were saying, so he just kind of blatted down the boulevard, but it drove. And like, to me, that's all that counts. Like, you got the experience of driving it. Yeah, no,
I mean, ultimately the thing is to take your idea from in here to out there, make it a reality. And I mean, really you're the byproduct of being handed some weird Hot Wheels and being like, yeah, I'm going to make it. I'm going to build that. You know what I mean? And I think there's really a level of excitement in that's been missing from the car scene for so long, because now it's like, to your point earlier, like who's got the biggest paycheck's going to build the baddest car. And I get a ton of enjoyment out of seeing guys that are super creative. They follow a theme all the way through, and they didn't do it with money. They did it with talent and planning, you know?
Well, you asked me a bit about my idols, right, growing up, and they weren't necessarily VW guys. But once I got to meet Gene Winfield and spend time with him, like he was one of the dudes that they literally invented hot rodding. Right. He's 97 years old, and he's not a big money guy. He's not a rock star. He's not flying jets across the world to do all the fancy things. He's a car dude. And it's so inspiring to see him, to this day, just that's who he is.
Well, and I think there's, I think Winfield's known for the fade paint job, right? That was like his signature move. And there's so many guys that were in the hobby that, you look at Barris, right? Barris did everything for TV. So 90% of everything they did was just, for 10 minutes on screen and shoot it from this angle and we're ready, fire, go. You know what I mean?
Business, right? They're great businessmen. Can't dispute it.
Yeah. So if you, within the Volkswagen hobby itself, if you had carte blanche to build whatever VW you wanted to build, what would be the ideal custom VW that you want to build? Like, what's on your wish list?
Well, on the conservative side of things, I mentioned in our prior phone call, definitely like an early Beetle, something completely stock. Like, I just love that idea. Like, I wouldn't mess with it. I haven't experienced any of the true German engineering. Right. Maybe a 70 Super Beetle that was stock, but yeah, I want to drive something really old fashioned.
And then now going to the other side of the scale, full custom, like, and this is my attitude. In 1951, they made 100,000 split windows. Okay. It's okay to cut one up if you need to, you know what I mean? But I mean, if you want to do one, if you were to do one full custom, what would be, you have any dreams of like a super rad custom VW, or what's your favorite style that you'd want to do?
Well, the bug that I'm working on now is really where my head's at. It's like a total freak show. Big, heavy on the van influence, the fantasy shagwagon van. So it's got a BGW Spectre, if that's how you pronounce it, one of those fiberglass van kits. So that's where it started. It's a 68 bug, nothing fancy, came out of Long Beach. And then I found this kit in Lancaster, California area. And it's been going on again. When are you going to finish the bug? I'm like a year and a half into it, and it's just getting weirder. So that's where my head's at now. It's going to be fantasy, psychedelic, freak show, like everything. That bug. What's it called? Like, it's not the wild rose, pink lady.
The pink bug. Lady. Yep.
Pink lady. It's going to be friends with Pink Lady. That's what I'm going for.
Well, and what's even crazier, Pink Lady was built by a Swedish guy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so that's even wild. He's a Swedish metal. He was the metal guy on the Boyd's Hot Rod TV. Wow. Back in American Hot Rod days, he was one of the metal guys, and his name is Bert is his name, and he did, like, he built that whole thing. It's all lead and all that stuff, and dude went to town on it. But I saw that
Pomona show, and they had all the VWs there at Pomona for the special room, and I was knocked out. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think I may have seen it there. I had two cars there on display, and neither are cars that I built. They're both cars that, and what's funny is in our car hobby, it's always like, don't buy Rick's car, bro, because everybody's gonna say you're driving Rick's car, right? It's like that whole thing. Just do your own thing. But the hobby's been around long enough where I've been able to acquire a couple cars that were cars that inspired me back in the day, and they came up for sale for reasonable prices. And it was like, it's such a cool car. Why not get it? Because it's a twofold thing, right? it's a car that inspired me, and then I get to drive it. Right.
Yeah,
so and there's something to be said. I had some friends in town for that VW show, some guys from Canada and all that stuff. And I opened the hood of this car from the 80s. They're like, "What's that big hole into the hood?" I said, "Bro, that's the 80s. Leave it alone. Don't ask." It was a different time. It was called Get a Carpet. What are we doing here? Get a carpet kit and be done with it.
Right. So was the hole under the trunk for speakers? It was like, yes. What was going on?
Yeah. It was for all because this car had
right.
Yeah, it's a red chop top. It's like a 4-inch chop, and I'm not a huge fan of chop tops. It's a 4-inch chop. It's done so nice, and the guy who chopped it, Scott Gildner, he's up there in San Fernando. He's in Northridge area.
I know. He painted one of the projects I work on. He's one of the Burbank choppers ish.
No, he painted Aaron Cahan's car with Burbank choppers.
I saw that car at the Galpin show. Super. The iconic cover car with the scallops, right?
Yeah, he painted that car, and then
I knew something. I was like, I know he's a great painter. Yeah.
And the chop top that I own, he built it, sold it to a guy. That's when it got in the magazine. So when I went and bought the car in Big Bear, I drove all the way to Northridge just to chat with him about the whole build of the car. And he's like, "Yeah, it was just my daily driver, and I put the real BRMs on it, and I chopped it." He says, "I chopped it 4 inches because I wanted a 64 and earlier." And it was a 65. Oh man, and that's the thing. He's a VW, he's an iconic VW guy. And I've kind of dubbed him the guy that built the San Fernando Valley style Volkswagens, which were, if you go back through the 80s and you look at the cars he built, he did Carson tops, scallops, color matches, shaved door handles, 39 Ford taillights, floating bumpers, but he would stay true to the VW style, but put heavy hot rod influencing in it. And it was super cool, so he's a guy that's, it's interesting to have a conversation with him because we were talking about louvers and stuff. He goes, "Well, I can look at a louver and tell you if it's off my machine because they're real particular in the way that they're done, whatever." But he's a talented guy that's just a one-man show in his garage painting cars. He does Zephyrs and Carson tops, and he's known in all fields. But yeah, it's rad to have these cars, to see these cars built by guys when they were 20 years old, that they're still in the game doing what they're doing. And that was just, that was he sold the car for a down payment on a house, got $5,000 for the car. And he's like, "Bro, this is most money I've ever seen in my life."
That's how I roll, right? Without the TV show, I was just I was that guy living in the garage. True story.
Well, no, man, I'm glad you took some time to come on the podcast. With respect to what you got going on, I definitely want all of our listeners to go support you. So they need to go to subscribe to your YouTube channel, which is Full Custom Ian.
Or Custom Ian, yeah, Full Custom Ian. I'm gonna send you a link.
Full Custom, and I'm sure I'm going to add at least 3, so don't worry about it, man. I'm just going to push you over the top. You're welcome for that. But
thank you, sir.
But no, I think I love what you're doing because, in spite of everything else, you're staying true to what you do, and it's commendable to do that because too much, especially in today's modern times, people are too influenced by what everybody else thinks, and
I also can't understand how a reality TV car builder would become something of a rock star. It's like that happens, and I would never want to follow that path.
Right.
Like, I'm just a dude in the, like I mentioned, but before our podcast today, I was out raking leaves in the yard. Like, it's not that. I don't know how it became that, but I'm a guy in the garage every day.
And now, and I'm an extended invite to you to come to so we do a show here in Vegas, first weekend in October. I don't know if that conflicts with any of the other stuff you're doing, but first weekend in October at the Orleans Hotel and Casino, it's where Viva is. I'm sure you've been to Viva. So
yeah, I love Orleans. I've been there a million times.
So in October, we do one crazy weekend where I'd love to have you bring a Volkswagen out, come out, hang out. And it's a 3-day event. We do a big strip cruise Friday night, gratuitous car show on Saturday. And then we have the poker run on Saturday night, and it's a good time. It's people in their cars driving around Vegas, and the hotel is a place where we all crash and hang out.
Yeah, I'd love to. Again, the Orleans is an awesome venue for car shows. It's just gigantic. So, yeah, I'll put that on my calendar. I want to know.
Well, I'm personally inviting you to that, and I'll definitely, and I promise you, we'll make arrangements to get you out here and get this situated, because I think you'd have a great time, and it's kind of taking car shows back to, building the cars is all about driving the cars and having fun and experiencing and getting the result of your hard work and getting driving it and having people look at it, and
Yes.
And that's the premise behind the show, and also the camaraderie, because honestly, we get people like Viva, we get people from around the world at our show because they want to drive a Volkswagen down the iconic Las Vegas Boulevard,
And not to cut you off, but that was something that was a critical difference between the hot rod scene and the VW scene. Like for me, like skateboarding and being into VWs, it was just an inclusive experience.
Yes.
Whereas the hot rodders seemed to be just like exclusive, like I'm the top dog, I'm going to get the biggest trophy. But the VW scene was definitely the antithesis of that. It was always the hangout, heck yeah, love what you're doing scene.
Well, and our goal through the event we put on here is to try to bring that back, to appreciate what everybody's doing, to highlight people that are putting the effort and energy in their car. And it's not about the dollars, it's about the commitment to your build of what you're doing, because everybody's at different levels of affordability, but it doesn't mean it has to be bad,
Yeah.
So no, it's definitely, there's always been the dichotomy, right? That I remember I used to see in Hot VWs, there was a shirt that said, but unfortunately I think I'm at that age now, but it said, hot rods are for people too fat to fit in Volkswagens. And there's always,
hey, I resemble that comment.
no, trust me, I do too. But there's a lot of guys from, Ryan Reed, who does a lot of hot rod stuff, and Aaron Broughton. Both those guys worked for Fat Jack and worked at SoCal and stuff like that. And so those guys, even though they were in the hot rod world, still drove their Volkswagens to the events and got a little bit of a hard time from the hot rod guys. But, I think the Volkswagen is still the counterculture, hot rod vehicle, and I think it's even cooler that you're getting. Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah. I can't quit it.
Well, it's even cooler that you're getting out. So now if you ever need anything VW related, listen, I'm in the other desert just to the north of you. So anything you guys need, I can always help you. I got a friend with a wrecking yard, and I can always help you come up with something kind of cool. So,
get it, man. Good talking.
And before we wrap up, anything you wanted to let any of our listeners know where they can, do you have a website? Because obviously, like I said, you're one of us, and the way we support one of us to keep doing what you're doing is however we can support you, whether it's subscribe to your YouTube channel, if you got an opportunity to support you by buying some merch and stuff like that, just like the band on tour, man, when they're selling t-shirts, they're paying the bills.
That's really where we're at. We are solo. Like that's what we're up against, just trying to make a living. So the YouTube channel is what we're up to. Like we're monetized, and every subscription counts. That's what's paying our bills. Got a couple side hustles, but my work with the cars is funded by the YouTube. So yeah, please check it out.
Well, that's awesome, man. And I definitely appreciate you making the time to come on the podcast. And this will not be the last of it. We'll definitely, when you're ready to debut the bug, when it's done, the panel bug, all that stuff, like let's do a podcast. Let's talk about it. Let's I'd love to see it done at one crazy weekend. Listen, man, if it doesn't if it doesn't hit this year, man, October 2025 is a
I'll put that on my calendar, because I just came up with a name for the car, and it's maybe a little bit risque, but it's going to be called the Purple Nurple. It's going to be it's that ridiculous. So that's some inside information.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, Ian, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast, making some time for your true home, the VW world, man. And we appreciate you for doing what you're doing and giving the VWs the exposure they're getting, because you're putting a lot of VW chassis out there in platforms, which is in the 70s In the 60s, the custom car guys saw the VW platform as a no holds barred custom thing.
True story.
So, man, I again, thanks for coming on, and everybody make sure you go subscribe to Full Custom Ian, follow him on Instagram. Watch out. There's a lot of fake pages out there, so be careful.
There's a lot of fake pages. Don't fall for the scammers.
Yeah, that's it for it. Well, you know what? Before we wrap up, you said you met Gene Whitfield. What's it like? Gene seems like a serious, down to earth, cool cat. How can we help support him? Because I know he's going through a little bit. I've been seeing on Instagram things are kind of funky or whatever. What's
Yeah. So again, he's old. He's super old. He's under care now in a facility that can take care of a 97-year-old guy. So they're doing a fundraiser event with his, I think it's a Shopify. I'll share it on my socials, and I'll send you also I'll text you the address. But yeah, that's what's up. Everything. He's selling T-shirts to help fund his retirement. So yeah, help the guy out.
No, absolutely, man. Well, that's what it's about, right? Like it's about us people that are watching what you do and appreciating what you just turning around, supporting you guys, so you can just keep doing what you're doing, because it brings us joy through watching your creativity, and your creativity inspires all of us out here, man. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. And anything I can do to support you at all, man, Let's Talk Dubs. We got your back.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Good times. Good talking.
Thanks, brother. If you like that podcast, and I know you do, make sure you guys share Let's Talk Does with any of your VW friends that are out there. We're over 500,000 downloads total, and lots of people are listening to Let's Talk Dubs. But we love it when more get on board, because it spurs us, gives us more content ideas. A lot of people reach out. And don't forget, you want to shout out on the podcast, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, 5-star review. I'm just figuring out how to get them in the other locations around the world, so I did stumble across some of these from England, and I'll give some shout outs in just a minute. But I want to remind you guys, this summer we're going to be a bunch of VW shows. The first one we're going to be at is the German Air Show, the Niagara Falls VW. It's the VW show in Niagara Falls. It's Ontario's premier VW show, June 21st through 22nd, Niagara Falls. So make sure you guys come check us out over there if you're out in that area. Also, Viva Skeg Vegas is happening August 15th and 16th in Lincolnshire, UK. So we're going to be there hanging out with the guys from Viva Skeg Vegas. Looking forward to that. Out there camp with all you guys and interviewing some people. I'm excited about that particular event. Also, we're going to be September. We're going to be in Enschede, Netherlands at the Air Mighty show. So make sure you guys, if you're out and about, come check us out. I'm sure there's going to be some more events that we'll be at coming up that I'll mention on the podcast coming up. But yeah, make sure you guys come stop by, say hi. If you're a listener, make sure you look me up. I may have some special stuff for you guys. Well, I just figured out how to look up my reviews in other countries, and I've got some reviews I wanted to read from the UK. Only 23 reviews from you guys in the UK. I know there are a lot more listeners in the UK than 23, so you guys get on your Apple Podcast app and give Let's Talk Dubs some more reviews. Now that I figured out how I can read these things, the first one that I'm going to give out to is John C. back September. John the Sparky said, and some of these I may have already read, but I'll blast them real quick since there's just a handful of these. Building a sand rail, drag racing the UK, VWDRC. yeah, he had a lot of connections with John Mayer, Dick Nuss, and a bunch of those guys. So shout out to John the Sparky. Also, hip hop has a. He said just discovered this. So much cool stuff. Been in a dub since '88. When him and his dad restored his first book. So interesting to hear from both legends of the VW scene and what's happening now. Stu, East Coast VW. Let's see. VW Russ is absolutely the best VW podcast in the world. Loads of great stories, fun facts, and serious historic facts too. Boot. Well done, Bill T. Keep it going. Love my Friday fix. Also, this one here says 914 CJ says, so amazing podcast with some great content, insight, and places you wouldn't normally have access to. Makes tiling the bathroom almost bearable. Carl. Just listen to, this is a must listen. Carl Tay says, just listen to the chat with the legend that is Ricky James. Really interesting to hear his take on the bus scene. And it's mine, I'll do what I want with it approach, which is pretty cool. Jones 25 says, absolutely an amazing site on site to the VW world. He says, hey, Bill T, absolutely love this podcast. As a late comer to the VW scene, it's so interesting to hear everyone's stories. Helps me get through my 10-hour welding shift. Keep up the good work. All the best. Vic from Dorset in the UK. Shout out to Vic. Hope to see you at Volksworld. Well, I won't be at Volksworld this year, but and I'm sure this podcast might be this comment may be from a while back. But Kiwi Pio says, best and only VW podcast worth listening to. As a relatively new guy to the VW scene, although owned a bug for 10 years, finally getting around to getting it roadworthy. This show has not only inspired me to get out working on the bug, but introduced me to so many experts in the product in the field. Keep up the amazing work and hope to see you at Volksworld show in the UK. Callum, Scotland. So shout out to Callum. Appreciate you for listening. Also, still the best VW podcast. Robert, 63 VW. Been following from the beginning, but only just thought about reviewing. But this is still the best video podcast out there. Good hearing all the stories from years ago and all the new up-to-date information. Keep up the good work. Thanks for making my days go quicker at work. Robert T, 63 VW. Appreciate it. WG74 says top content worldwide, air-cooled. Love it. The next one's from Gez Sheffield says, love listening to these podcasts in my garage in the small city of Sheffield in the UK whilst working on mine and my friend's Porsche VWs. Great to hear all about the VW scene in the US. Love hearing about the history and the characters that have made this scene what is today. We'll be passing the pod on to fellow enthusiasts and friends. Keep up the good work. Keep in the faith. Appreciate you, brother. Make sure you guys do that. Share the podcast. Love listening to this podcast. Have just bought my bug back that I stupidly sold in 2000. This podcast got me back in the scene, and that's grown so far in 20 years. Keep up the good work, Bill. Steve, London, UK. P.S. It's a shame you never mention your own cars. Well, let's talk about the Bull Run bus for just a minute. No, I'm just kidding. The first guy to review us in the UK that gave us a written review was DCC16. Just loving all the Let's Talk Dubs podcasts. It's so rad. Been into my air-cooled VW since 84. Hot VW is the magazine of choice, but all seem so far away from the UK. Listening to these is bringing the cool stuff I love about the VW story, the history, the fun. It's hot VWs for the ears. Great job. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate all you guys. Make sure you guys give us a 5-star review and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. So that was the UK version. I'll be going through some of the other countries and tracking down what I can and getting to you guys. So appreciate you guys for listening and look forward to bringing out some more podcasts. We've got the one with Corey Mack and Brian Watts coming up. And don't forget, next week, we're going to be putting out a YouTube video with our top 10, 80s and early 90s covers VW Trends edition. So this will be VW Trends, our favorite magazine covers. We're going to do one coming up with Hot VWs. So we're kind of going back through the last ones. And look down the description below. I'm going to leave a link to the magazine covers that you guys can check. And maybe you guys can play at home. When I launch the video, I'm going to go ahead and do it on New Year's Day, probably about midday. And I will be in the chat room if you guys want to chat about why and what covers. So that's it for this week, guys. Lots more stuff coming up. Appreciate all you guys for listening. Looking forward to another great year of podcasts. You guys have a safe and happy new year. I appreciate all you guys. Much love. And thank you so much for another great year of podcast supporting the podcast by picking up merch, leaving reviews, and sharing the podcast. So again, guys, I couldn't do it without you, and I do it for you guys as much as I do it for myself. Appreciate all of that. I wish you nothing but prosperity with your VW projects, your family, your health, and all the things that matter in life. And until next year, guys, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.